Welcome to FemLead, the podcast on female leadership and role models. This show aims to inspire and equip you with the tools you need to navigate your career plans. FemLead brings inspiring career perspectives and strategies to guide your path to success. Your host, Alexandra, will interview role models on new exciting topics with each episode. If you like what you hear, give us a review and subscribe to the show on your preferred streaming platform. Enjoy.
Hello all and welcome to a new episode of FemLead Podcast. I know you haven't heard from us in a few weeks, but those have been very busy. And honestly, today we bring you some super exciting news. We just hosted our networking session in Copenhagen, where an incredible speaker from IKEA shared her career journey and advice on how to progress in your roles within a large company. It was really an inspiring session, and we cannot be more grateful that you chose to spend an afternoon with us. So thank you again. Remember that if you want to know more about our community events, you need to subscribe to FemLead Podcast newsletter. We send it usually once a month, where we update you on all the upcoming networking events, any partnerships, and any opportunities for you to progress in your career. We also share advice, and if you want to help us create even a better content setup, you are very welcome to write us as well. Today, we have an exciting episode where we will deep dive into a new topic. We are going to have a super cool speaker coming with us today from Nordea Markets. Sophie Jelstrup is the Chief Dealer and Functional Lead in Global Trading at Nordea Markets. She is based in Copenhagen, Denmark, and studied economics with a double master degree in finance from University of Copenhagen and Imperial College London. She worked within the financial industry since she started in a pension fund as a student worker and continued through the graduate program at Nordea Markets. Sophie is really a cool speaker, and today she's joining us to talk about what does it mean to be a trader, and she will also give us a lot of insights into the sector, into progression within this career path, and also how she started this career path with the graduate program at Nordea Markets. There's a lot of information, and I really advise you to go and check the podcast notes, because we are going to add there very relevant links also for your career development, but also more about Nordea in general. So please go check that as well. Nordea Markets is the leading capital markets partner in the Nordics. Nordea Markets also takes part in the Nordea graduate program. So today we're going to cover that topic as well. The graduate program is an extensive program that covers a variety of business areas, whether that is in markets, IT, business, or compliance, all in which you will be able to accelerate your career and evolve, both professionally and personally. I look very much forward to bringing this interview to you today. So without further ado, let's welcome Sophie to FemLead Podcast. Hi, Sophie. Welcome to FemLead Podcast. It's really an honor to have you here. How are you today?
Hi, Alexandra. I'm good. Thanks for having me. So excited to be here.
Yes, me too. I'm super excited. So I've never interviewed anybody that works in the financial sector. And we were speaking just earlier today that I have so many curiosities, and I really want to discuss with you some of the specifics of your job, especially because you have such a cool title. You are a Chief Dealer and Functional Lead at Nordea Markets. And I'm so curious, what does it mean exactly? And what are the specifics of your role? So today you're joining us to discuss your pretty impressive career path, and also to give us more details into what does it mean to work in this sector. So we agreed that we're going to go through your career path, and also maybe go a little bit at the beginning of how you started. And then, of course, share your career advice with our listeners. I'm sure a lot of them will find it very inspiring. Are you ready?
I'm still ready.
Fantastic. So, Sophie, tell us first, what does it mean to be a dealer at Nordea Markets? So what are the benefits of working in such a role, and how do you define the role itself?
So what is a dealer? I guess more people know the term trader from these, American movies where there's like a lot of guys standing on some floor shouting. And I mean, it's a little less dramatic, but I'm a trader. I'm a market maker. And I mean, it's very, we can put it very simple. I mean, I have a product which I can sell and I can buy. I have a bunch of customers, which is the reason I'm here. I'm here to make a market for them to trade the product that I'm kind of owner of. And while I do that, I need to try and make money. That's the very basic description of what I do. There's so much more to the job, which is a lot of the things around it, which I also find interesting. But I mean, the basic idea of being a trader is sitting here on the huge trading floor. Nordea's trading floor is like one of the biggest in the Nordics, or is the biggest in the Nordics, and trading, following the markets.
Mm-hmm. I've actually visited the trading floor at Nordea maybe 4 years ago. We were having an event within Nordea, and then someone asked us. Obviously, I was not as much into the industry as maybe I'm now more interested. So I didn't even know about the trading floor at Nordea as being one of the biggest, right? If not the biggest in the Nordics, but someone else did. So we were asked if we want to see it, and we did a tour, and but it was after working hours, and I think there were very few people left. But it was a very nice experience to actually see how large it is, and like what does it mean to work right on the trading floor. So that was pretty awesome. Yeah. I think you touched upon something very interesting, which is the understanding of what does it mean, because we've all seen the Wolf of Wall Street, and we've all understood like how this sector is actually day-to-day developing. So I would be very curious to tell us maybe a little bit about how does your day-to-day look like? Can you give us a little bit more specific details of like what do you do every day?
Yes, absolutely. So I mean, to me, a trader, so I'm a chief dealer, just meaning that I'm the one who is in charge of the product that I sell, you could say. So I mean, I view it as my own little shop. I have a shop which sells and buys a little niche product. And I mean, this niche product is, of course, the coolest of all of the products. And I mean, I'm in charge of making that, it's kind of my franchise. So I need to be able to understand which customers could have an interest in this, what sort of research would be relevant for them, who in Nordea Markets, the salespeople, can I talk to, who then talk to the customers. Actually understanding the market, of course. I mean, the market we're in now, how does that affect the product I'm trading? What do we believe is going to happen in the future? Why would it be relevant for my customers to know this? All of these things. I mean, it's my own little shop, and that's what's incredible. I mean, I get to be my own little Nordea within the big structure of Nordea, with all the benefits of actually navigating in this big company who has all these resources, all these people who know a lot of things, but I'm the driver. I'm the one who gets to be creative.
That's very interesting. And I think it's also something about the fact that it's something that I've never heard before, chief dealer, but of course, like in any other leadership track, let's say, you are a CXO of a specific department in this case. I would be curious to ask you, obviously we will discuss also your progression, but I would be curious to know, how did you start in this financial sector? What attracted you to it in the first place?
So I actually started, I mean, if we go way back to my studies, I actually started studying physics. I quite quantitative. I like being able to, put 2 lines under the result, all these things. I find the physics world to be very fascinating. And I studied that for 1.5 years. And I didn't really know what I was supposed to use it for. I couldn't see myself as being a researcher. I couldn't see myself teaching in school. So, I mean, what was I supposed to use it for? And that's why I actually turned to economics instead, because, I mean, economics gives you such a broad possibility range of jobs. I could see myself choosing many different paths there. I switched to economics, and then I got a student job, which is very common here in Denmark to have that, so a part-time job while studying. And that was in a pension fund, one of the largest pension funds in Denmark, working with the portfolio managers, which I found extremely interesting. And that's why I kind of just went along with that. I chose my electives to be within the finance. I went to London and studied a master there as well within finance. So just continuing on that way. Funny thing is that it turns out that there's so many physicists sitting here next to me in the bank. So, I mean, I could have ended up the same place had I continued. I just didn't understand, I mean, what all these tech backgrounds actually, where that can also take you. But
absolutely,
just a side note.
Yeah, that's a very good side note, because I feel that it's very timely to say that the way we see, I mean, timely, but also honestly, the reality that the way we see career paths has really changed. So now we all work in tech in a way or another. So our backgrounds can really be helpful within a specific area without having to be, let's say, trained or not necessarily graduated with a master's within the field, right? So it's a very good point that you mentioned this. If you want to start your career in a certain industry, you don't need to have necessarily a degree that says you're going to become a trader at Nordea one day, right? So it's something that's really important to mention. So thank you for that. And when it comes to how to get started, I would like to ask you, what do you think now in retrospect are the 3 most important skills that are to be considered?
Yeah, it's tough to say. I mean, I think for me, when I look at the people that I think will be successful here, it's very much about curiosity and actually having an interest in learning. I mean, it's the mindset. It's about taking ownership, being proactive. I think that is the most important thing, honestly. I think we can all, I mean, we're all smart people. We can all learn. So it's mostly about if you find it interesting and actually just doing it. So
yeah,
a simple way to answer it, but yeah.
And also passion and curiosity. It's hard to put it into words. So many times when you say it like that, is like when I talk about passion and curiosity, is like, what does it mean? But I think there is a sweet spot there where you're really excited to go to work and you're really excited to like be in that environment, which is, well, the first thing is like it makes you really feel that you're contributing towards something. And then there's also the fact that you constantly feel like you can learn more, and that there's nothing here that stops me from knowing, impacting, creating even more with my peers. There's something there about having the, let's say, validation that when you are within an environment, it doesn't mean that in 2 years it's done. Like there's nothing else for you to do. You constantly feel like there's more to know, to create, to impact. And once you find that, and you find yourself in this environment, I think it's pretty cool that you've mentioned like now that you need to like the environment, you need to be passionate about the subject, so that you can have this validation back that there's always something else to be found, right? And it seems like for you, it went pretty well, because you did progress throughout your career, and now you work as a chief dealer as well.
Yeah. And again, I mean, so I've always found an interest, or I realized with economics, I really find it interesting to understand how, systems work. How does, why do we have central banks? Why, I mean, understanding geopolitics, understanding how all of these systems, large or small, everything is dependent on each other to some extent. And understanding how everything kind of gets together. That's what I find interesting. I love reading The Economist. I love reading Financial Times. Other people really love to, classic, like to follow the stock market. That's not something I find that interesting, but it doesn't mean that you can't be a trader because you don't follow the stock market from when you're 5 years old. I mean, there's so many different ways to have an interest and a passion in the financial markets. And I mean, the different types of personalities, I mean, diversity in all, I mean, spectrums. I mean, it's you can be so many different things and be successful here. As you say, we are all kind of part of the tech world. I mean, so is Nordea, so is the financial sector, so is especially these big legacy banks, which Nordea also is. I mean, we are on a journey to not be overtaken by all the smaller tech companies trying to disrupt us, right? So, I mean, there's something to do for everybody who actually find it interesting.
Absolutely. And you can easily hear your excitement about the setup that you're in. So it's really cool to like be able to discuss it in details, because now you can give us maybe more specifics on how your career progressed. One of my next question is, how would you describe your career path? So like, You can talk about what were some of the maybe challenging aspects within your career, but also maybe what was really something that you were looking forward to as time passed, because you've been with Nordea for a few years now, and I feel like you've had many experiences. So it will really give us a good introduction to your career, to tell us a little bit more about the different steps you took.
Yes. So, I mean, I've been in Nordea in December. I've been here 7 years. Feels so old when I say that, 7 years. And I mean, so I guess I started in the graduate program here. So the graduate program is usually 2 years. I stepped in halfway through and was a bit starting. And of course, the graduate program today is different from when I started. And depending on which department you're in, the graduate program can also look different because you kind of make it, it needs to be relevant in the different departments you're in. So I actually had a permanent position while being part of the graduate program. So I got a position as a trader. A assistant dealer is kind of the entry level title. And I mean, we don't really care much about titles, but anyway, it's a junior position. I mean, it's about learning. It's about, being curious. That's what the graduate program is also about. I mean, it's also a label. People know that you're in a trainee, a learning position, and it's okay. I mean, we're supposed to be there. We're supposed to learn. I mean, the most important thing for me from the graduate program is actually the network you get, and also I got a mentor as well. So I guess for me, switching from being a student to being full-time employee was, quite a switch. I thought that was quite difficult. I mean, as a student, I knew how to be successful, but how do you know how to be successful when you actually start working? I found that to be extremely difficult. I mean, I'm a hard worker. I really like to do well. I have goals, all these things. And that switch was difficult. And having peers who wasn't necessarily my close colleagues, but were people in the same position, making that transition at the same time, which you get through the graduate program, was extremely important to me. And then you also get the mentor program. But as a trader, you're a specialist. And you have different levels within this specialist. And of course, you start out as a junior on a desk, and each desk trades one product. And I started on one product, and that didn't really work out. I didn't like the product, and it wasn't, depending on which product you trade, you could say there's different types of personalities for each product, kind of, in a very weird way. But you have high frequency traded products, and you have products which don't trade more than once a week. You have very quantitative type of products, and you have products which is more about it's different skills, different types of product requires, and that didn't suit me. And I actually I got rotated to another one. So that's also a good part of the graduate program, and also being part of a big organization like Nordea, there's actually opportunities to rotate if the position doesn't suit you. So I was a junior on this new product, and I've just kind of worked my way up since then. So, being more and more specialized, and the more you move up, the more responsibility you get, the more ownership you get to take, the more, everything, like any more senior position, I guess, doesn't matter which path you're in. Yeah. Then I guess we can talk about the industry in general. It's no secret that the financial sector and the banking business is male dominated, has some stereotypical ways. There is a lot of legacy. There is a certain culture, and that is something that is here, but it's also something which is not static. It's something we are working with, and I'm privileged in many ways, but I'm also a minority here. As a trader, there's not that many females. That's how it is at the moment. I don't see why it should be like that. For me, I've thrived. I really love being a trader. I think there's so many great things as we've talked about already. But
you touched on so many topics that I think we can deep dive even more into. And I mean, when I knew that we were gonna talk, I was like so interested in exactly this, like what is it that you do? So the details of your role, and really, what do you think was a challenge, as in whatever we know about the financial industry or whatever it's being said as things to be aware of. It's always different from person to person. So your experience will not equal my experience if I were to work in the same sector or industry or even role, right? And looking through your experience, I would be very curious, because you've also been with Nordea now for 7 years and you've done probably some reflection. What do you say would be some advice that you have for professionals that are looking to enter this industry?
Yeah. I mean, just being brave, do it. There's so much to offer here. I think one of my learnings is that if I actually, if I'm proactive, if I actually take ownership, I have a management who's actually really interested in listening, active listening, not just listening and then turning the other way, but actually active listening to what I have to say. And if I actually if I have an idea how we can move forward, what we could do differently, I often get the chance to do it. So it's about taking ownership and doing that. And maybe if I had thought of that, or been more brave, or I don't know, had the energy from the start to do that more, I think, you should do that. Yeah, it's again, I know it's, I don't have like specific hard focus points. I to me, it's very much about the attitude. Again, coming back to who would be successful here. I think the only other specific to-do you could do if you had interest is about seeking people who actually have an interest. So we can talk about that. If you actually find trading interesting, if you actually find the financial sector interesting, whichever thing you might find interesting, reach out to people who are within that industry. If you have an interest in trading, reach out to me, for instance. Come and have a coffee. We are all quite passionate about our jobs. I love to talk about it, and I'm quite proud when people reach out and actually want to learn about it.
Absolutely.
I think that's important to actually understand. Because nobody knows what a job is like. You have to try it out. You have to talk to people who knows about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. You also say something about a topic that's very close to my heart when it comes to progression in work and life, and that is finding mentors, finding your tribe, finding an ecosystem that can support you, and not thinking that you need to know already what you're supposed to do perfectly, and also that you should be great at it from the first day. Because I think this is where the misconception is about what does it mean to be successful at work. And in my experience, also interviewing other of our family guests, I think a lot of people talk about being kind of brave, but also easy on yourself, that you don't put yourself in those situations where you stress out because maybe, you had other expectations, or, different interactions when it comes to your own expectations about yourself. And what you just shared also comes to, in a way, contribute to the idea that if I contact you and want to talk to you about trading and I am passionate about it, that to a certain extent, you will know way more than me, and you will also be an expert in a specific product. And there's no way that I can do that. So you kind of have this agreement that, hey, I want to teach you what I know. I want to tell you about what I know. And I already know that there's no other way you could actually find out about it, or the details of it are not to be found on the internet, especially when it comes to your particular role at Nordea, right? And I think that's super important to mention here, that the expectations of each role, they obviously differ, and they will be felt and seen differently by everybody else. But when it comes to building this ecosystem, you need to reach out and you need to ask questions, because otherwise you're not going to know what you're supposed to do.
No.
And I think that's really a cool way to frame the advice for anybody interested in this subject and in this industry, to reach out and to be curious and want to know the people that work within this field, right?
Yeah. And it's also, I mean, if you look further, it's also a way to get a job further ahead. I mean, everything, it just makes sense to do it. You get inspired, agree. In every sense, it makes sense. And it's not something that I've been good at, because I've just been in my own little bubble always. I've never thought that far ahead. I've tried to go along with what I found interesting, because I truly believe if we actually work with what we find interesting, we'll always be good at it. That's a good way to start. And I agree with you about this being perfect, imperfect, and also when we talked about the transition from school to work, that's also a bit of the problem. You know how to be the perfect student, how to succeed, but I mean, at work, that's just difficult. I mean, I think it's more about being brave, about trying, and classic, when you fail, you actually learn and you get better. And
absolutely,
that's also something you learn with time, that's okay. I mean, nobody knows the answer. You think that the manager knows the correct way to do things, but there's no correct way. There's just, trying, and with all you have built up over the years, hopefully you make the best choice in that instant.
Absolutely. You touch on so many pieces of advice that could be, we can create a snippet of each of them. And that's also something maybe related to wrap up this question on your maybe interactions at work, because I think one of the, let's say, more career mature a realization I came to was that no one really knows exactly what the right answer is, obviously, unless it's something very specific or, very related to a policy or something that is already within the admin and law part. But otherwise, everything, like the way we make decisions and the way that we organize ourselves at work, it has to do with the core group that you work with, and the values of the company, the mission of the company, your role, what the company is trying to achieve, and also what you are supposed to be achieving, right, as a professional. But it doesn't mean that you will go to a manager and you'll get the recipe. Like, it's really about trial and error, and especially in the industry that you work in, and especially for your role, it's really about that, right? And having this passion for economics and in trading, and also understanding that it's part of a bigger thing. It's really, for some people, it's very motivating. So I really hope that they will listen to this interview and feel inspired to, first of all, reach out to you and ask you for a coffee and get to know more what you do, and also how your career progressed, because I feel it's really, really inspiring to hear all of those thoughts that you've had also about your progression. So thank you again, Sophie. It's really fun. I have so many other questions, so I'll move on, because I do want to ask you something that I think is very relevant, and I'm very curious about your point of view. I want to talk to you about the topic of financial freedom, because I've had guests before that talked about the importance of women being financially independent so that they can build wealth. We talk a lot about equality, inclusion, equity. We also talk about the fact that financial freedom has to do with being independent and being able to take decisions for yourself, maybe for your family, and not be restricted in any way. But because you work in this industry, I'm very curious about your opinion and your point of view. What do you think is financial freedom, and what are your thoughts about this topic in general?
So for me personally, it's reaching the point where you have the freedom to actually choose based on your passion about what you actually want. I mean, I want to have the freedom, the possibility of choosing what makes sense to me, what is meaningful to me. That to me is freedom. I choose to work here because I want to be here. I'm not forced to be here because of the pay, because of anything. I mean, I'm here as long as I choose to be here. That for me is freedom. But I mean, of course, because of work within finance, financial products. I mean, I have an insight into many things that for some reason people don't understand. It seems it's complicated. It's not really, but it's, I mean, if you don't know where to start, what to learn, I mean, everything from a loan, what does it actually mean when you're buying a house, mortgage loans, I mean, this insight into it, I mean, that's also freedom to actually understand and being independent. Yeah. And of course, I mean, I meet a lot of people who are surprised when I say I'm a trader. You know, if I'm working in a bank, I must be, or working in sales, or working in different things. I mean, as a woman, actually, I mean, I work with money. I'm competitive. I like to win. Like to be good. All these things is surprising to them.
I think you point out something very important, and that is going back to some of the questions we had in the beginning, where you talked about what are the expectations or any sort of topics related to an industry where you already have set, okay, these are the 5 boxes where people can fit into. And this is exactly why we're doing this interview, to discuss the details of your experience and understand how do you feel in your current position at Nordea Markets with so much responsibility, and what is very good for you, and what were some of the things where you saw there was some sort of misunderstanding, misconception, and so on. And I think that touching on the fact that we don't see a lot of women in finance is exactly where I wanted to get at some point, because the idea is that we create these pieces of content with FemLead to show role models. And the truth is that there are not many role models in finance, as many as we could see. So then when you don't see yourself, you're also less prone to some extent to think that I can do it, you know, like if now I know about you, now I know about other cool women in finance that I did research on, or someone in my network mentioned them, and so on. And this is kind of how we build a community of people that talk about important topics, but they are also role models for others. And I hope that more women will want to join this sector, this industry, but also a trader role, because like you said, you are in a male-dominated industry, a trader, and sometimes people ask you, what do you do? And they are surprised to hear that you are a trader, which is surprising in 2022. But is it though? Because do we see so many women in finance to be like, oh no, everybody can be? And so there's this circle where we need to discuss this topic and how to make it better. And I'm very happy that you did mention some of your thoughts, because I'm sure that the listeners will also feel that, okay, I also had some sort of understanding that it's a more male-dominated world, but it doesn't need to be, in the sense that everybody should be welcomed to apply. Everybody should be welcome to see how it is. And this is kind of how cultures and communities are being built, right? So I'm very excited that you share your experience. I think a lot of people will find it very inspiring. And thank you for going into, the details of your journey, because this is really what makes it special to know about you and how Sophie is navigating her chief dealer role at Nordea Markets. So this is really, really cool. I want to continue by asking you on the same note, maybe obviously depending on how much you want to share, but I think everybody's interested to understand a little bit more about, so what are some of the challenges that you've encountered at work, and how do you approach challenges at work in general? What did you learn from these experiences? What is your mindset? How do you normally deal with, let's say, more difficult situations at work?
Yeah. So in general, I mean, specific to being a trader, which is a weird job. I mean, you don't find that many places in other types of job. I mean, it is a job where there is a lot of pressure. I mean, it's about making the right choice in the right second, you could say. I mean, you get measured every day, because we're here for the customers, but we're also here to make money, and that's something you measure every day, and it's quite easy to see whether or not you've made money, and that's pressure. It's pressure to know when I go home I have positions on, and if something happens and I wake up early in the morning and I check the news and I know something's happened, I immediately go, what positions do I have on? How will that be affected? It's pressure. and that's part of the job, and you have to be able to cope with that, and you have to try it out to see if that's something for you or not. I mean, it's not for everybody, but I mean, if you can cope with that, and of course, I mean, finding support in your colleagues, in your mentor, in your manager. I mean, we all have to deal with this. That's part of it.
I have maybe a more specific question, if that's okay, because I am curious to understand from your experience. I find it quite fascinating, honestly. How do you deal with like difficult, let's say, work days? Like because you, like you said, you have a pretty interesting role, so to speak, by default. So and you mentioned earlier that you are a competitive person, that you really like what you're doing. Is there something like that you reflected on about how you handle these situations? Because you seem to me very calm, for example. Do you think the way that you react to these situations really matters? And if so, what do you think about when you find yourself in like, oh no, this is not a great place to be in?
That's also, I mean, learning. I mean, I wasn't like this when I started. Of course, it's something you learn. Like when you are an athlete, I mean, and under pressure, you learn to breathe, have a think. I mean, when you don't get air to the brain, you can't think, and you need to think. That's kind of the start, right? I mean, you go over the different scenarios. I mean, you understand the psychology of yourself as well. I mean, we understand that we as human beings tend to react in one way. Our behavior, I mean, takes us often down a wrong path if you are not aware of this. So, I mean, breathe, think about it, and go. What's the worst that can happen? The worst thing that can happen would be maybe to lose a lot of money. Okay, we don't want to do that. Well, what can we do? Being rational about it, thinking about the risks, and what if I want to take that risk, what are the benefits? How much could I actually earn? Or what is, I mean, the upside and the downside? Always kind of navigating this balance between that. That's kind of part of it, and that's also what makes it fun. It's a horrible thing about the job, but it's also the fantastic thing about the job. It's you know, you're having you know, I like to say that we kind of apply theory. So, I mean, I get to study a lot of things, speak to a lot of people, just, you know, collect all these different inputs and apply that into a recommendation to the customer, into the trades that we have on the book. And if we make money, I mean, we can see that we've made a result. We can see if the customers are happy because they've actually correctly hedged their portfolio or whatever it is they've done. I mean, it's very rewarding at the same time.
Yeah, it sounds like you reached a balance within the industry and also within your role. And like you said, it took you time. And I think you talked about some very important parts of your journey. Is there anything else that you think you would like to share with the audience today?
I mean, we can touch upon, I mean, this culture, the culture that the sector industry represents, and I mean, where we have been, where we are now, and hopefully where we'll be moving to. Because I mean, it's not perfect, definitely not, but I think the point is that we are moving forward, and there's actually room to take part in moving the industry forward, and that's what I'm doing myself as well through I've started this shadow board to actually be part of changing and setting the path for the culture I want to be part of.
Can you give us some details about what does it mean? So, or what is the initiative that you've mentioned now?
Yeah. So I have, together with a few of my colleagues, started a shadow board in our part of the organization, LCNI, or Large Corporates and Institutions. So it's called BlueTomorrow, just because we represent and hopefully is the path moving forward. So, I mean, it's a employee-driven initiative, platform to you could see minimize the gap between top management and the employees. So what we have found is that there tends, and I guess across the industry and in other industries as well, sometimes it's difficult for management to hear what the, you know, us small ants at the bottom is saying, what our opinions are, what we think is relevant, all these things. So I mean, BlueTomorrow is a shadow board to kind of be the sparring partner and have a voice and direct line to senior management. So it's a platform for all employees to gain insight, impact, and actually, I mean, if you want to be part of making a change, being part, have an idea, I mean, something, it can be anything, dealing with culture, dealing with, if you think it makes more sense that you work with this group, if they're doing something cool, and, so it can be within anything. You actually have a platform here.
That sounds really cool. And you initiated this platform, correct?
Yeah.
That's really cool. I think it's also an example of how employees can take initiative. And it's something that I'm very happy you mentioned, because it also shows that there's different ways of creating change and also of improving culture in general. Because the topic of company culture, I've discussed so many times, but at the same time, it's not a recipe for success. It's really about the company's employees and the culture that they want to build together. And the moment when the employees feel empowered to shape that culture and they feel like, okay, there is a way to do it, then that's really a great sign moving forward. And I feel like you are just sharing now that you see the sign and you are experiencing this change now. You have the opportunity to create this change, which is honestly pretty cool.
Yeah. And I think that's the most, I mean, we are not there yet. But I mean, it's pretty cool that we're actually at the point where we can be part of taking us where we want to end.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, being part
that's
of
fantastic.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, very happy that you've mentioned that as well. I want to go back to your the start of your career at Nordea, because you actually mentioned quite a few details about starting within the graduate program as a graduate, and then moving through the ranks after the graduate program. You said that the graduate program was 2 years, and you also mentioned that in the beginning the product you were assigned to was not for you, and that you had the opportunity to move forward within the program. I think you gave some pretty cool details, but I would like you to maybe tell us more about why do you think this is a good way of starting your career? Because graduate programs are actually a popular way to kickstart your career in a specific domain or maybe a large company, right? How was your experience overall?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a fantastic way to start. I mean, to transition into working in a permanent grown-up position, you could say. I mean, it still emphasizes learning. I mean, you get introduced to what it means to be within a workplace. You get to try out different things, which you don't know if you haven't tried being in this specific area within this specific company. You don't know where you will fit in and how it actually is to work. So in general, I mean, trying out new things, learning different people, setting up a network, maybe getting a mentor, all of these things, which kind of, helps you start the next part of your journey. And it is just a kickstarter of your career, and for you to focus in on where you might fit in and what you actually find interesting.
Mm-hmm. And would you say that starting in a graduate program, was it hard to get through? Like, do you think it's more difficult in this way to be part of the graduate program then?
Yeah. No, I think it's, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it is the most common way for Nordea to hire called entry level employees. I mean, because it is a fantastic way to get people started. It's a open way to rotate people. So we all find our place within the company. And again, the company is huge. There's so many opportunities here, and there's room for everybody. You just kind of need to find your place and where you actually find interest. I mean, if you don't know that something exists, how would you know to apply for that?
Absolutely. And I think this is also maybe, in my experience, I've being a student in Denmark and also experiencing the end of school and transitioning to the workforce as a full-time employee. When you were talking in the beginning of this interview about the fact that it was hard, I was like, oh, I'm so happy you said that, because I also experienced, I mean, it wasn't necessarily that I thought it was hard to do my job, but I think I also started as a student assistant at the company that basically built my career here in Denmark. And when I graduated, I was promoted, and I realized within a few months that, wait a second, this is now my full-time job. Like, this is it. Like, this is not ending in like at the end of the year, like this is now what I need to continue to strive towards, to, find my next level, find the next focus for the job. When you're a student assistant, it feels like you are more within some sort of project management setup where there's a deadline to it. Versus when you start your full-time job, you become responsible very fast for many things. And you probably don't have the experience of that role yet, because you are at the beginning of your career. And you said that Nordea actually recruits many junior employees this way. And there needs to be this support system to like help you progress. And I'm very happy you've mentioned that, because I was lucky to have good leaders that I could ask for advice, and some of them gave me like life advice that I took with me to other instances as well. But you also mentioned that in Nordea you get a mentor, and that you also get connected to peers that can really help you kickstart your career and also find out what you want to do after the graduate program. And you have the opportunity to experience different departments through rotation, right? So I'm super happy that you've mentioned this. And I think that the timing is also very good in terms of how graduate programs work, because actually this is a very popular time to apply for graduate programs. And what is probably very familiar for many of our listeners, but for some maybe it's not, is that recruitment for graduate programs happen before the year starts, and then the following year you become part of the actual rotation program, right? So for example, for Nordea now, this is one of the months where it's the application rounds are open, right? So the deadline now for Nordea, because I did my research, it's October 31st, 2022, and now it's October, right? So if anybody's interested in this sort of opportunity, you should definitely check Nordea LC&I, which is a large corporates and institutions, the graduate program, where basically you can apply and understand more about what does it mean to be working as a graduate at Nordea. But of course, Sophie already shared a lot of her experience, so I think now you got more of an understanding about it. I think it's
actually, we have also these open house events. So that's actually something BlueTomorrow has initiated, which LC&I is fully taken over and running now, because it's such a great idea. So I mean, it's an opportunity to come and visit the trading floor, but the LC&I as a whole, and actually speak to the people working here. So come and speak to me, come and speak to people doing other cool stuff.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to share everything that I find about the graduate program. And of course, since you've mentioned the event, I would love to be able to promote that to our listeners, so that they also find out about ways to meet you and also to see the trading floor and talk to other people there, because I think that's exactly why we want to build this community, right? For people to know about these opportunities and to learn from you about the career paths they can take. Yeah. What I think it's important to note is also that the tech and finance roles are exactly the focus of this graduate program. So everything that you've mentioned now is really the focus of it. And I think that's really cool to be aware of. So if you're interested, I'm going to share all the links. Check our social media, and also look at the podcast notes on this episode. And then we will make sure to share Sophie's info, but also the info about the graduate program. So thank you so much for sharing all the details, because I think people were very, very inspired by, they will be very, very inspired by your journey. And they will also get to understand more about what does it mean to work as a trader, as a chief dealer at Nordea Markets, and what is the environment and the setup that they will have there. Because I think that's very important as well, to understand that it's all part of a big ecosystem. And that's something that you came here to also share with us. So thank you so much. I want to go to the final 5 fire questions to wrap up this interview. And I'm going to start by asking you, what is one book you think everybody should read?
I've read, Sarah Louise Moore from CBS. she's written this book called Ledelseskøn, which I can highly recommend. I don't actually know if it's in English or not, but I mean, it's about stereotypes and bias in the workplace between the genders.
Thank you. What is the best piece of advice that you have ever received?
Well, be my full self. I mean, don't make yourself small or anything. I mean, there's room for all of us. Just go be your full, authentic self.
That's fantastic. Who is your role model?
I mean, I don't really have role models. I guess, I mean, I'm inspired by people depending, throughout life and journey and how you change. I mean, I look to different people. I mean, at the moment right now, it's people like Louise or Mia Wagner or people like that. But I mean, that changes. When I was smaller, it was the circus clown. I don't know.
Yeah, I think an important part of who are your role models is also to kind of evolve with them, meaning that when you're growing up or when you started your career, for example, you were looking up to, I don't know, somebody that had a business at the time that was successful, and now you look up, for example, to your manager or to your manager's manager or to your colleague who's having like an inspiring career track, right? So all of these things are really something to consider when we look at role models. But some of those that you've mentioned are also my role models. So I I think I can see why. What would you choose to do if you were to have another career?
I mean, as you can tell, I really love my job. So if I was supposed to do something different, I think it should be like completely different. I don't know, working in nature. I always liked animals. Working in the zoo, maybe. I don't know. Completely different.
Something completely different, yes. If you could change places with someone, who would it be and why?
Yeah, of course, thought about that one. I mean, there's a lot of inspirational people where you're like, oh, it'd be so great to meet them. But I mean, the current situation we have in the world, I mean, there's so many things going on, which I don't understand. I mean, why are the things happening? And I mean, we have some leaders in the world which should lead us. And for me, they are not so inspirational. So, I mean, imagine if you could actually be Putin, or imagine if you could be Trump. I mean, actually understand what they're doing, and imagine, I mean, the change you could do in the world if you could be them just for a few days.
Yeah. A very, I would say, hard question to answer when you look at the setup that we have now and the landscape that we are witnessing. So, we hope for better days, and we also hope for more optimistic news outside, because it is true that if you read the news lately, it's not the happiest of places. And I hope that by sharing this interview with you, we also give our listeners maybe a focus on something else that can really impact them, right? And also, maybe think about some of the options that we have in the future to really change the world for the better. I think that's really something that we should leave our listeners with. And always be kind, because that's the rule number one, to be able to create this safe space as well. Yeah, fantastic. Sophie, you've been so, you've been very generous with your time and also with your insights. So I hope you enjoyed this interview as well, because I really did.
Me too.
I want to thank you for the time. I want to thank all of our listeners for spending this hour with us. I hope you got some insights into Sophie's career path and into Nordea Markets and what does it mean to work as a trader. And I hope that you will take the opportunity to read more about the opportunities at Nordea Markets, and also to enjoy this interview for your own career development.
Yeah, just thanks for having me, and thanks for listening. It's been really interesting. I think I've learned something myself.
That's great to hear. Thank you so much, Sophie. And thank you all for listening. I hope you found this interview inspiring, and stay tuned for more episodes with inspiring female role models.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of FemLead Podcast. Share the news with your friends and follow us on social media at FemLead Podcast everywhere.